Hey, I'm the Confused Ogre, and today I'm going to be showing you beginning to end on how I paint this Space Wolves Combat Patrol. It's a long one, but it should be a good one. You see, I'm going to be gifting this to a good buddy of mine, and I hope he likes it. Grab some snacks, and let's get started. Let's paint. Okay, so this is a cool story, and I'm super excited to tell it. And I'm also super excited to paint this set. This is my first Space Marine set that I've ever built or painted, so I'm pretty excited about it and don't really know what to expect. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you guys my story about Dakota, and we'll do it here in the beginning while I assemble the models, since there's not a whole lot to talk about with the assembly phase, and to be honest, it's kind of boring. So I'll tell the story. You can hang out, listen, and I'll put some notes down in the the chapters down below, so you can jump ahead to the painting if you're here for the painting. Otherwise, you can follow along and watch me build these Space Wolves. However, first I'll chat about these bases real quick. There's a lot going on here that's a little abnormal to normal miniature making, but I'm a big fan of prepping these bases. I rough them up, glue some 6x2mm magnets on there, and fill them with milliput before painting the bottom. I just think it gives a professional, hefty, and high quality feel to the models. So, and as that side bonus, it sticks to anything metal. But it's a lot of work. It's kind of a form of meditation or therapy for me, and I enjoy doing it. So that's why you see me doing all this work on these bases. Try one, try two, and tell me what you think, if it's worth the effort on your end. But however, let's jump to telling the story about Dakota. So the story begins about 20 years ago, when I was a young man, fresh out of high school, working my way through college, had a bunch of side jobs, side hustles, everything going on. And one of those jobs I picked up was I don't think you call it occupational therapist, but what kind of therapist is that? Just, whatever job you could get as a young college-age kid. Helping people at home, some home health care type stuff. Anyway, got a job working with this young boy, Dakota. He has cerebral palsy, wheelchair bound, and really just trying to figure out and make it through childhood, right? And it was kind of the perfect storm, I think, for both of us. Like I said, I was a young man ready to conquer the world. Nothing really could stand in my way. Had big dreams of what I wanted to do, and I think some of that maybe bled over to Dakota, because growing up with those issues, right? I'm sure there's all kinds of thoughts and feelings about what you can or can't do, or what people tell you can or can't do, and I really just approached my time with Dakota as like, screw all that. Like, you got some different hurdles than the rest of us, but everybody's got a hurdle of some kind, and let's not let it get you down, and let's be normal. So we'd go hang out. We would, read fantasy books, play games, go on walks, or try to walk, try to ride bikes. A lot of these things that a lot of us take for granted, but I believe then, I believe now, it's just something you got to get out and do it, right? So Dakota and I did a lot of that stuff. We got out in the community, out and about, and just lived life and had a good time. And I don't know if you guys ever find those people in your life that just, constantly pop up and show up, whether you're thinking of them or not thinking of them, or connecting with them or not. But Dakota's been one of those people in my life. I've got a few of them that pop up all the time, that you see, you run into, way more than just coincidence, right? But I've ran into Dakota many times over the years, and we have kept in touch, but I'll see him in random places throughout town. Anyway, it's been 20 years, and we've seen each other on and off, and talked about stuff. And anyway, the other day I was in the bookstore and ran into Dakota, and it was good to see him, and we were catching up and chatting about life and hobbies, and it was kind of interesting. We were I don't think I shared with him that I was getting into, painting miniatures, but he shared with me his extreme love of Warhammer these days, and how he's been reading all the books, and he loves Space Wolves, and is just super excited about it. And for me, the first thing that came to my mind was, oh my gosh, I've been doing this the last year. Like, I can't wait to paint this guy some Space Wolves. So, I asked him, hey, Dakota, have you been playing these games? Have you tried to paint, or do you have any figures? And Dakota's got a really good sense of humor, and, he's kind of made some jokes, if I remember right, about, like, hey, dude, I got cerebral palsy. You think I can paint these figures? And we kind of laughed, and and then he brought up the cost of it, and they are expensive, but he wanted more than anything to play. And so I knew then and there that I was going to go over and buy him some Space Wolves and get him painted up, and it was going to be a cool gift, a cool birthday present, whatever it may be, and I was going to make that happen for him. I thought it'd be a real fun thing to do for both of us. So left the bookstore and headed straight over to the Warhammer store in town, and talked to the manager and told him what I wanted to do. That I got a buddy, Dakota, that's got cerebral palsy. He's in a wheelchair, and he stopped me right then. And Dakota? I know Dakota. He's in here all the time. He's always watching these games. And so it was kind of cool that we both knew him. And I told him that, for his birthday, I wanted to get him some Space Wolves here. So the store manager said, say no more, and pulled a combat patrol off the shelf and handed it to me and said, this one's on me, I'll cover it, and you paint it up and give it to Dakota. This will be great. So I was thankful and happy and couldn't wait to get started on the project. So I kept painting and working, and kind of getting fearful about that I was maybe in over my head. I'd never done a big project like this before. I'd been used to doing one miniature at a time, and it usually didn't take a lot of time and energy. But after starting this YouTube channel, I've been trying to learn to film and edit, and so I ended up just filming this whole process, which turned into a huge pain in the butt. I didn't realize how tough it is to film and record and try to keep everything in focus and get good footage, and then also realizing how much time I put into some of these stinking things. So it was a good experience for me. It was a pain. Hopefully you guys do get some enjoyment out of this video. But in any rate, as I was building these sets, the ideas were flowing, and I was, staying in contact with that Warhammer store manager and kind of asking him about how does this work with tournaments and playing, because I've never played a game of it before. And he educated me on how these games work, that we'll have certain tournament days that's Age of Sigmar or 40K or Combat Patrol or whatever. So we kind of hatched this idea of planning a space, or not a space marine, but a combat patrol tournament day. And so he was going to start a tournament day. We'll pick the weekend, and this will line up perfect with Dakota's birthday and surprising him with his gift, so that he could show up for the tournament thinking he's just going to watch, and then boom, we'll get him some Space Wolves to actually play in the tournament. So I give Dakota a call and tell him that I've been thinking about him and his passion for Warhammer, and that I am actually interested in checking out this Warhammer. I don't really know anything about the game, and I wanted to observe it and watch it. So maybe he could give me a heads up next time there's a tournament or a game day coming up, and maybe I could tag along. And he was like, sure, dude, I'll totally let you know. Little did he know that I knew that we had a whole date planned in a month. And he never even gave me a heads up. And so I'd bump him here and there and, hey, is there anything coming up? And, he's got stuff going on in his life and he didn't know and he didn't think there was anything coming up. And so then I'm starting to sweat. I wanted to keep it a surprise. I didn't want him to know that we'd had this thing planned. And here we are, like, I think a week out before the tournament. And I call him up like, hey, Dakota, I heard there's a tournament this weekend. Are you planning on going to that? And he's like, well, yeah, dude, I wouldn't miss it. And in my head, I'm thinking like, geez, dude, I told you like 3 times I wanted to go with you and you didn't give me an invite. But, oh well, the best plans, right? So anyway, he said, yeah, totally. Come on out. It'll be fun. I'm just going to be showing up and observing and watching. So we made the plan that next Saturday I'd be there and we would watch the Warhammer tournament. So Saturday arrived and supposed to start at, I think, 1 o'clock. And I'm thinking, I'm getting my stuff ready. I've got a whole case that I bought and painted his name on it in Space Wolf letters, and I was planning on getting there an hour early so that we could, I could talk to the manager, we could get it set up near a table, get everything in place so that we could surprise him. And it was at that moment, about noon, that I remembered Dakota is always like 3 hours early to everything. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to call him, see where he's at, and see how I can make this happen, because my idea of getting there early was quickly, fading out of a possibility. I give him a call. Hey, Dakota, where you at, man? He says, I'm here. I'm ready. I'm just hanging out. Don't want to be late. And I thought, crap. What am I going to do? So texted the manager, let him know what's up, and I'm going to bring the set, try to drop it near the desk for hopefully Dakota doesn't see it and that he can get it prepped near a table that Dakota's going to be playing with. But he was already way ahead of me. He had a table picked out and he had a partner ready for Dakota and a printout with a different army that Dakota was going to use. And Dakota's already reviewing the page and trying to prepare what his pieces do and whatnot. So good thing he was ahead of me on that. So we get in there, we get positioned up near the or get taken over to the table. The game's already starting, people are flooding in and tournaments began, and the manager gets the box set up over by the table, and Dakota's reading through his rule book, his sheet, trying to get up to speed on what his pieces can do, and he doesn't have any figures, right? So the manager's like, hey, Dakota, I'm sorry, man. I totally forgot that I left the army at home that I was going to borrow you. So you don't got any figures. And, Dakota for a moment there was, kind of sad and confused. Like, oh, what? Oh, shoot. I don't quite understand. And, then we're like, well, hey, man, look, that's weird. There's a case over there with your name on it. And he's like, what? That's weird. Why would there be something with my name on it here? And so we're like, oh, let's open it up. Let's check it out, man. So we grabbed it and gave it to him and opened it up. And we had some notes in there that talked about how we got this put together for him. And this is his set of Space Wolves that he can now show up every weekend and play these combat patrol tournaments with. And it was a cool moment. Dakota loved it. He was ecstatic. And tons of people that were in the middle of playing games and in the store were coming over. They were telling him happy birthday, patting him on the back, checking out the set, loving the set. And a bunch of them even gifted a few of their own models that they'd been preparing or building and painting. So it was a pretty cool moment to see the Warhammer community and all of these people coming together really in support of each other, and especially Dakota, right? It was so cool to see him surrounded by all the people that love him. And on that note, even his family knew that this was kind of in the works, and they even stopped by to watch him play and to check out his gifts and see his enjoyment. So it was a really cool experience for everybody involved. I had a blast painting these, building these. I learned a lot. And ultimately, just seeing Dakota's reaction made it all worthwhile, right? The 100 hours I spent painting and filming and preparing this whole event, it really made it worthwhile, right? I think Dakota totally appreciated it. He loved them. He loves everything about this. So I'm happy, he's happy, and everybody that was involved, I think, is happy. So I hope you guys enjoyed the story. It was a really cool, event in my life and obviously Dakota's life. But I think there's probably people here that are ready to paint. So let's get after it. Now, we missed a lot of steps here in the beginning with this assembly and basing. I take a lot of it for granted. A lot of it comes natural to me at this point, but I've been doing it a little while. If you got any questions, drop them down in the comments below. I can try to answer them. But we're just going to pick up right here with the basing. I got all the pieces glued down, then PVA glued some sand to this base. And once I got the sand on there, I felt like I had too much going on the base. I got skulls, I got rocks. I know that there's going to be some vegetation and snow, and I thought just having that big skull and horns laying around was going to be just too much and draw too much attention, so popped them off. Here's the base for Haldor, Lieutenant Haldor, and I had a lot of fun building this one. Coming up with the rocks, getting the positioning on there. Honestly, I have just as much fun with the bases as I do with the miniatures on these things. Like I said before, I don't really play the games, but these paintings have been so much fun, and it's really just the randomness of it. I just kind of go where my gut takes me and glue random rocks, random dirt, and each one comes out so unique. I just freaking love it. The basing is more fun. I'd say it's more fun than the miniature for me. Okay, so after I got all of the basing done, I mix up some watered down PVA glue, and I use that to seal the entire base down. Brushing it really starts pulling up some of the loose grits of sand, so really watered down. I just dab it all over the sand, dab it on everything, and then I even give a coat on the rocks and skulls and everything, but it really turns into more of using the brush to wipe or wash off the glue on everything. But doing that, it really just gives kind of a seal coat to everything, and once you prime it, it makes it 10 times easier to paint and do those details, right? If you don't do this, then that paint gets soaked up so fast. Next, we are moving on to priming. There's lots of good primers out there, and it's expensive, but that Citadel Black, I just think is the best primer out there. Close second place is that Rust-Oleum 2X Flat Black. I kind of bounce around between the two based on availability and what I have at the time. But we got the models done, we got the bases sealed, and now I do a primer coat on everything. I do find this step to be pretty darn rewarding. I don't know what it is. I think it's just like a major milestone in this whole miniature process, right? You've built the miniature, you've built the base, you've put it all together, you've sealed it all, and this just encapsulates it, and it just always makes me feel good when I hit this step. I feel like we've got a major milestone hit and we are ready to begin painting. Okay, so with these Space Wolves, I airbrushed them, and this was my very first attempt at airbrushing. I'd had an airbrush, I'd played around with it, I was never very good, but from what I know of brushing, and with this time crunch for, less than, a month at this point, I think, to have these guys ready to go for Dakota's reveal, I knew I had to save some time. So that's really the only reason I busted out the airbrush. And I hit him with a base coat of Prussian blue from Vallejo, followed by some highlighting with this sky blue from Vallejo. I did some experimenting with different colors, and I just feel like the standard Citadel Space Wolf colors, it was way too gray, way too dark. It didn't seem to really embody the bright blue that I was really hoping to get from these guys. So this is what I landed on. Like I said, did a bunch of experiments, but that Vallejo blue colors really stood out to me as being, yeah, these are Space Wolves. And right here, they doesn't look super blue, but once I threw this wash on, that we'll talk about in a little bit, it really brought them back to the blue that I really wanted to land on. When I got to the mech suit, I did some experimenting here. I thought it was pretty dang down and dirty to use my hand to block out where I wanted to get some highlights. And I also played around with some masking tape, but I knew that the mech suit was going to be the one I needed to spend the most time on, so I practiced on all of the Marines and Reavers, so I had enough experience that once I got to the mech suit, I felt pretty confident that I was going to be able to get some good highlights, and I think it turned out pretty darn slick. I was happy with the results here. So after I finished airbrushing, I really felt like the minis were way too bright, and I wanted to, do two things. I wanted to darken them down, make them a little more blue, and make those cracks and crevices a little more darker, a little more recessed. So I experimented around with the different washes, and this is the one that I settled on that I think really hit the goals that I was looking for. And that was 1 drop of that Prussian blue from Vallejo, 3 drops of a black wash. I think I'm using this Pro Acryl black wash here. 4 drops of Lamia medium from Citadel, and then just 4 drops of regular water. Now you might have to experiment with your own wash if you're following along with me, but that's what I settled on. I think the results were pretty good. I was happy with it. And one important thing to remember here, though, is you don't want too much. I really tended the model as it dried, each one, to make sure that there was no pooling of any liquid, because if you got any pooling, then it would dry with some obvious watermarks and lines. So I really made sure that there was not an excess amount of wash when I did this, and I just did that by drying the brush on the washcloth and going back and hitting those spots where there was any pooling. So here I am calling this priming round 2. Did all the airbrushing, we did the wash. I've got the look of the blue Space Wolf color that I'm looking for. But I've got all of those details that need to be addressed. So I pull out my Vallejo black primer and I'm going to hit everything that I know is going to be painted with a different color or that is going to be black. And I'm lazy. Everything that was going to be black, I just left it with this Vallejo black primer color. I feel like it doesn't matter that much. Once I hit it with a wash, you're never going to be able to tell the difference. Now, you might be asking, why do this extra work? Could you just do 2 coats of another color? And the answer is probably yes. The spots that you know are going to be a different color, you can totally probably do that. I've just found that it feels like it saves me time to pull out the primer, hit everything with primer again, and know that I'm going to get pretty good coverage with my next color. But I think you could totally just do those 2 thin coats on the spots that you know are going to be a different color. The caveat would be these places that you know are going to be a metal color. And like with this mech suit and with a lot of the different Space Wolf weapons and armor I know is going to be a metal, I find that those metallic colors just cover a lot better over a black as opposed to this blue overspray. Okay, so we're moving on to the accessories and details. Let's start with leather. That's going to be all of the belts, leg straps, holsters, canisters. Now, I start with a base coat here. It should just be 1 coat of rhinox hide. Hit everything with 1 good covering coat. If you need to go back, touch it up, or do a second coat, feel free. And after that, we're going to do a 50-50 mixture of rhinox hide and scrag brown. It looks pretty bright when you apply it, but it dries a lot darker than you think. So if you want to do some test spots, feel free. But hit all of the edge highlighting with that 50-50 mixture before jumping back over to a straight scrag brown. And there, we're just going to be doing a pretty topical highlight. Moving into the shoulders, I just did a simple lead belcher with a black wash for these intercessors before starting on the red shoulder pads. Now we're starting with that black primer and working our way up to white, kind of in a zenithal highlight with these dry brushes. And once that's dry, you can hit it with contrast veil red. Gives us the final product that we're looking for. There'll be a lot of touch-ups involved here on the edges later on, but while you got that red out, go ahead and hit the eyeballs. And then we'll get started on putting the black stripes. I really like this step. I just cut out some masking tape, some long triangle shapes, and really go with a random configuration here of those stripes. I don't even know what these are called on the Space Wolves, but I just tried to match the box art and found this technique to work pretty well. Get them on there and use another dry brush, an old crummy brush, get that Abaddon black out. And I found that the least amount of paint worked the best on the brush. If you get it too wet, like I have here, you can have some bleed through, but if you have that happen, no worries, we can touch it up. You can either scratch it off with an X-Acto knife or get a fine brush and we can just freehand some better edges there. But I didn't really worry about perfection too much because, you know, these guys have battle damage, and if the edges aren't perfectly crisp, that's fine. It just means the paint's worn off, and in fact, I'll even throw some red right on top to make it look like some of it's scratched off. Next, we're going to move on to the yellow shoulder pads. And I start with a base of pink. I'm using this Mephiston red mixed with some white scar, get a good deep pink base coat going on. And then same thing, we're going to zenithal highlight, working our way up from that deep pink to a bright white in the middle. So go ahead and play with the colors, work your way up. I just use that dry brush to kind of dab and dot all over the pads. And once again, we might have to touch up with some blue later on, but that gives the effect that I'm going for here. And once we pull out that contrast paint, you'll see it really pairs nicely with that pink color. Bad Moon Yellow, that's the contrast color of choice that I like. It really gives a good grimy feel on the edges with that bright highlight in the middle. And our final step is going to be painting in these wolf emblems. So have it on black, get yourself a fine tip brush, and we are going to do some fine miniature painting. Okay, next up is the emblems, and that includes the the emblems on their chest, as well as the guns and various tidbits and medals that adorn a lot of these guys all over the place. So the effect that I found to look the closest to it is hitting everything with this auric armor gold and following it up with a wash. I just used a contrast paint gore grunt of fur to go right back over the top of everything that I painted gold, and I think it turned out pretty nice. A big lesson I learned here is that those emblems on the chest are super hard to paint with the arms attached. So I've seen some videos of people keeping the arms detached up to this phase, and I might try that again. I might try that in the future if I get a chance. Next up is weapons. I found the simplest and easiest way to make these rifles look good was just copying the box art and painting some lead belcher right in the spots that these rifles had it. And when we followed it up with a wash at the end, it really just made them look nice and crisp. As far as the swords, I hit them with a lead belcher and that black wash as well. But the scabbards, I did very similar to the emblems, just changed the color a little bit, went a little darker, and hit the metal with some retribution armor, and followed up with that same wash of gore grunt of fur. And I think it really hit the tone that we wanted. Next up is Haldor's axe. I spent a lot of time just experimenting and playing around here with mostly a base coat of lead belcher, followed by some other coats of some brighter silvers I had, just playing around, and did some black washes on there. I haven't got a lot of experience doing some weapons, axes, swords, and I wish I had more time to play around with this one, but enjoy yourself, explore, play around, right? That's what this hobby's all about. That's what we're trying to do here. And on the handle, I did some darker red with a black wash over everything, and it gave the vibe I was looking for this guy. But I am kind of bummed. I wish I would have had more time to really get in the weeds and figure out some more things to do with that axe. But oh well, next time we'll be on it. And then once we moved on to Haldor's sword and scabbard here, like I said, it's the same thing. That gold with the wash on top, I think looks pretty sharp. So there's so many little bits and bobs on these miniatures, it's hard to really capture everything. So at this phase, I just took some time and hit all the little tiny details. Here I'm working on a rope. I did a base coat with white and then hit skeleton horde contrast paint. That's always my go-to for making ropes. Skeleton horde is the one to use. And then once those details and everything was all done, I did a final round of highlighting where I just took that sky blue and just touched the top edges and really just kind of made everything pop and just got creative. Okay, onto the fur pelts and the little fur trappings that these reavers are wearing. I had a ton of fun painting these fur pelts. I think this might have been one of the highlights of this build, is learning to paint fur, and I think it turned out really sharp, and I'm excited to paint more in the future. But we're starting with that flayed one flesh. Give a good 2 thin coats over the whole pelt, more specifically the outside edges, followed up with that rhinox hide through the middle parts. And don't gotta be too precise here. I mean, it's natural fur, right? There's lots of deviations, so don't spend a whole lot of time. After you got a good coat of that rhinox hide, oh, don't forget to do the underside paw pad areas. I forgot that. I think the first time around I had to come back, so I like the darker underneath personally, but each their own. Once you got all the rhinox hide done, we're going to jump over to that Mournfang brown, and you're gonna blend in the 2 areas, right? I spent most of my time here on the shading, the blending between the 2 colors. I think ultimately you don't need to spend a whole lot of time there, because we're gonna cover everything with a wash, and it's gonna help tie it all together, and you know, just enough to bring the 2 colors together will do the job. Next, pull out that contrast paint Wildwood. This was the magic. I was a little nervous till I got to this point, but once I threw a coat of Mournfang brown on everything, I was stoked. It tied it together, it looked great, and I was so happy with it. Got the pelt done and did the same techniques for the front of Haldor, as well as all those little, I don't even know what you call it, little pelt or tails that the reavers wear. But anyway, same method on all of them is how I approached it. Okay, you guys have waited for it. My favorite part, the basing. I hit the rocks first with that standard Mechanicus gray. I love it. That Mechanicus and Ulthuan is my 2 go-to gray colors. So I do a big, round hitting that Mechanicus on all of the big rocks. Go through all the bases, all the models, and do a nice coat with that. After everything's done with that initial round with Mechanicus, I switch over to the brighter Ulthuan Gray and start hitting those rocks again. It's a long process, but I find this one pretty darn rewarding, right? Seeing that black primer magically turning into rocks. And I just can't help but laugh every time I'm painting rocks. Like, what other hobby do you take rocks, glue them to something, paint them black, and then try to paint them to look like rocks again? It's kind of insanity if you think about it. But at any rate, it entertains me. I have fun doing it, and hope you like it. Alright, once the rocks are all done, we need to paint the dirt. I use Mornfang Brown, and a lot of times it's probably going to take you 2 coats to get full coverage. This process is kind of tedious. Put on a good movie or show or podcast and enjoy yourself. 2 thin coats of Mornfang Brown will do the trick. Alright, you've got the brown done, you've got the rocks done. This step goes pretty fast. It's a quick wash with Agrax Earthshade. It's just a dark brown wash contrast paint, right? So this helps make those recesses nice and dark. And the final step to this dirt base is some dry brushing. Pull out your flayed one flash and give a couple rounds of dry brushing over all the dirt. Really helps to make it pop and gives us that full contrast range from that dark recessed Earthshade wash that we did through the Mornfang, and now these top rocks are popping. Okay, we've made it to the Tactical Warsuit. I'm not gonna lie, I was looking forward to painting this guy since I saw him on the cover of the box. I've never painted anything mechanical yet, and I was pretty stoked to do it. It took a lot of work to assemble the guy, and it took a lot of work to paint him. I was pretty happy with the result overall. And not gonna lie, there's a lot of footage here, there's a lot of video of all the work that went into making him. I don't have a lot to say. It's a lot of the stuff that I've already talked about, a lot of the things that we've gone over in some footage It's all just kind of on repeat, but like I said, I waited best for last, did this guy last, and probably had the most fun painting him. I think it's easy to, second guess and beat yourself up when you're painting, human type minis and objects, because it never looks quite right, where I felt like the machine, right? It's a machine, it's a robot. You can get closer to perfect or what they look like, or what do you think they should look like. So, at any rate, I'm just gonna let this footage roll for a while. Hope you enjoy it, and I know I did. Okay, we made it through all of the painting of the Warsuit and the minis. And we're getting close to the end. It's time to do a wash. I pulled out Citadel's Nuln Oil, and I gave everything a once-over with it. Once again, just like that first wash we did, I really took a lot of care to ensure that no oil pooled up anywhere. It's really easy to do a wash, set it down, forget about it, and come back later and find a puddle had formed on the bottom of a leg or the bottom of a shoulder. So I really watched each mini as I went through this process and soaked up as much as I could of that wash so there's no pooling. And I think if you do that, you'll be happy with the results you get. Oh my god. Faces. Warhammer faces. This was probably the least enjoyable moment of this entire project. I struggled with painting these things, I struggled with filming these things, and I learned a lot of good lessons I can share with you here. Number one, the method I used, I try to keep things in 3 to 5 steps. So the method I used was this 3-step process. Step 1, do a base coat. Step 2, do a wash. Step 3, do a dry brush over the top. The colors I used mostly were Flayed One Flesh, followed by this Gilliam's Flesh contrast paint over the top, and then dry brushing that Flayed One over the top of it. However, I used several different colors and different experiments, and the big thing I took away that I was happy I did was I painted all of the heads that came with the kit. And my thinking was I could pick, the top 5 that I needed to use as the top 5 that turned out the best, which turned out to be great because there were several heads that when I finished, there was no way I could possibly use them. They looked so terrible. And like I said, the footage was so hard to get. So I managed to get a little bit scraped together here to show you some of the process, but my apologies, it's blurry, it's out of focus, and most of it was out of frame. So a lot of lessons learned, and yeah, so that was the skin. Hair, I did the same thing, kind of that 3-step process. So base coat it with some, this guy, I did just an orange base coat, followed up with a dark brown, I think it was Gore Grunta fur again on top, and then dry brushed or highlighted with that orange again. When it came to these guys with the gray hair, I was actually pleasantly surprised how well they turned out, considering how easy it is. I pulled out that Ulthuan gray, hit the beards and hair with that, and then I finished it off with just a coat of Nuln oil. And you can see on Haldor here, there's lots of beard and hair and his mustache. There's lots of good texture there. It was really simple. That gray coat followed by the Nuln oil. The Nuln oil just soaked in all the cracks and crevices, and it did all the work for me. It made my life so simple, and I think that was kind of the highlight of the whole head painting ordeal for me, is a good win, and I needed a win at that point. Once I got to painting the headgear on these Reavers, I felt home free. It's back to what I was used to. We had that black primer as the base, and I just hit the sides with some lead belcher and then dry brushed over the top with some more of that lead belcher. Just hit those high points, and that really gave the effect I was looking for. And you'll see in the next few minutes of footage, the headgear really played a lot into the eyes. I had to do a lot of back and forth touch-ups with painting the eye whites, coming back, touching up the headgear, coming back, touching up the eye whites. And I don't want to, like I said, I'm not a professional, but I don't want to have anybody think that this is easy by any means. This is very frustrating. Just when you thought something was looking good, you get a little slop, a little spillover, and you'd be back to touching up another color. But, my recommendation there is stick with it. Just keep going back and forth until you get a product that actually looks normal, looks natural. I think they call that the uncanny valley, right? Where it just doesn't look human. And I found myself thinking that an awful lot during this whole process, that these guys just don't look right. But that's part of the process. You're going back and forth a lot. Skin, headgear, eye whites, back and forth, back and forth. And you got to get good at that, because once you're focusing on just the eyes and the pupils, you're going to be doing that again. Back and forth, back and forth. I did an awful lot of dotting the pupils, looking at it, thinking that guy doesn't look right, and I'm back to covering it up with white and coming back and trying it again. So lots of attempts, lots of tries. And that's where I say I think it's huge to paint as many heads as you have there, so that way when you're all done, you can hold them all up and decide, hey, I got 5 minis, I need 5 heads. And if you've got 10 to choose from, it makes you feel much better to be able to pick those, top 5 that you need to use. And here we go. Here is my final products. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 heads. And I think I have 5, 6 of them that I need to use. So pick the ones that I want and gluing them on there. This felt like such a rewarding final step that I am close to the end, and I have got some actual space wolves to show for all my effort. Nope, 7. I need 7 heads because there's a intercessor, commander, or something like that that needs a head too. So I've got 7. I only painted 9. That gave me 2 that I could check. With everything painted, everything assembled, we're so close to the end. And I know I've got a lot of favorites to this process, which is probably why I do this, because I love doing it. But edging, this is so rewarding, so fun, even though it's menial and it takes a while. This really makes it feel like the project is coming to a close. So I get that Abaddon black out, and I am edging all of the bases one at a time, all 17 models. Is there 17? I think there's 17. 5, 10, 15, 16, 17. 17 models that I have to edge. And I also hit the bottom, make sure there's a good protective coat, because these things are probably going to get a lot of use. And if you've made it this far in the video, you've seen the insane amount of work that went into the assembly, the bases, the models, the reinforcement into the feet, into the bases. I know that Dakota's going to be playing with these things. They're probably going to get knocked down. I can't even talk right now. They're probably going to get knocked down. They're probably going to get dropped. And my goal making these things so beefy is that he can drop them, he can knock them down, and they're not going to get broken. They're not going to break off the bases. These things are going to be bomb-proof. So anyway, edging the bases, love this step, and we've made it. Last step is going to be throwing a clear coat on everything. And the clear coat that I like to use, this Rust-Oleum 2X clear. I don't know what it is about Rust-Oleum, but they've got a great product here. I've been very impressed with the price to level of the product. Love it. And here we go with Vegetation. I'm going to throw some grass tufts on about half of these models. I didn't want all of them to have it, but I wanted to mix it up a little bit. So use this Green Stuff World grass tufts. That's the stuff that I like best. I think they look a little bit more full, a little bit more realistic, and I just love this stuff. So I cut them in half, cut them in thirds, kind of get different variations on pieces, and roll them up, put some super glue on each side, dart them on there, and then use my X-Acto knife to, really make them stick, push them into the base where I want them, and then use the knife blade to kind of, move it around and shape the grass exactly how I want it to look. And with the grass on there, we have made it to the final step. Putting on the snow. I love this AK terrain snow. It's fluffy, it's kind of comical, but I love it because it's the only snow I found that when you put it on there and it dries, a day or two later, it actually looks like how you put it on there. So many of these other snows that I've tried, you put on, it looks good, but then a day later it dries and it looks shrunk, shriveled up, and totally different. So I love this stuff. I think it looks great. It's pretty high contrast to what we're doing here. which is what I like. And so don't really have much of a theme or a process here. I just kind of mix it onto the grass, put it on the tops of the rocks, slather it on the base, and more importantly, dab some onto the boots and the legs of the Marines, right? They're actually walking through this terrain, they're getting it on themselves, so make sure to get some on them too. And there we go, people. 1 Space Wolves Combat Patrol, 10 Intercessors, 5 Reavers, 1 Invictor Tactical Warsuit, and 1 Lieutenant Haldor Ice Pelt. All in the bag. I hope you stuck with me. Thanks for watching. See ya!